If you decide that you want to do something out of the kindness of your heart, or just to say thank you, that's cool. But then you have to ask yourself the question is, am I going to let my guilt or my generosity damage the ability of the company to grow? Okay, we are here for business lunch, and I'm going to pull up my notes so I can remember what Ryan and I were going to talk about today. And I want to welcome you guys. My name is Roland Frasier. This is Business Lunch. I think we have another person on here. You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Ryan Deiss, better known as Roland Frasier's business partner.
I love it. So we had a couple of things we wanted to talk about today. We're doing an upgrade. Industry-wide. We're doing an industry-wide upgrade. We're doing a portfolio-wide upgrade of the people that we are in business with, the people that we're doing business with, the people that are on the teams we have. We have a lot of A players, but not everybody was a perfect fit. Not saying that they're not good people, just that in our world, they didn't fit as an A player. And so we've kind of in just one of the divisions, for example, we've added about $100,000 a month in spend on people. Here in this time of being replaced with AI and all these other things, we actually hired real live people, and it's already starting to make a difference. We're about 30 days into this, but basically we just identified we said we want to take this thing to the next level in that company. And we said, okay, so we've got good traction. We've got good cash flow. We have the money to do it. Let's upgrade everything. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about, is it time? And if so, what are the advantages and disadvantages for you to consider going all A players? And Ryan, I want you to share some of your thoughts on this.
This is tough, man, because I think what it requires you to acknowledge as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, is that there were people who were perfectly who you needed in a particular moment in time. And that was good. And we thank them and we appreciate them. But they're not necessarily the people that are going to, be able to get you to the next level. And so a lot of times, the question that you would always ask is, if I had the opportunity to hire this person again, would I? And very often for these people, you're like, heck yeah. But you're overlaying where your business was, based on where I was when I hired him. Heck yeah. And I think the first thing that you have to acknowledge that with some people, it was the right decision before. It wouldn't be the right decision to rehire them now. And that doesn't mean that you were wrong then. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that you're no longer, aligned. And those can just be, I think it's just important first and foremost to do business with that reality. And say, like, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm a bad person? Does it mean that I didn't do enough to train them to get them to go to the next level? It just has a lot of issues, especially early on in startups. Some of these people become really, really good friends of yours. And so, does this mean that the friendship's going to end? It's tough. It's really, really, really tough. And so that's kind of just the first thing I would throw out there is just, if you feel that, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's tough for us because the friend versus employee thing can be an issue. If you have somebody that kind of came in at the beginning and they were an employee and they were fully compensated, are they a founder or are they a friend? Because, like, would they have done it just because they were friends, or did you not know them at the time and then they came in and you became friendly? But does that qualify as a friend, or did it evolve and pass over the threshold of employer-employee? But how do you ever know when you're paying somebody effectively for their services? How do you know if that's a friend or not a friend? And then one thing I've experienced when I've worked with people who were friends, then we worked together, and then we didn't work together anymore. Nothing changed, nothing bad as a result of that. But we found that we drifted completely apart because we weren't working together anymore. And not that we weren't friends, but we definitely weren't in touch anymore. And so it's kind of hard to say, like, how do I deal with these people that I've got? And Ryan, I want you to share some of the points that you and I talked about the other day in walking through a conversation with somebody about this. But before we do that, I just want to say, like, if you're going to get to where you want to go, you've got to have the people that can take you there. And it's not going to be something you can brute force on your own. There's a level at which the sheer brute force, I'm going to outwork everybody else, is going to either kill you, destroy all your relationships, or ultimately cause you to run out of steam. And that's going to be bad for you. So none of those are good outcomes. You've got to have people that are able to support you along the way. So then you say, well, who are the people that can best support me? And I remember having a conversation with Clayton Mask, who founded Infusionsoft, which is now Keep, about that along the way, there are thresholds of ones and threes. And at the ones and threes, that's when things start changing. So like at 100,000, 300,000, 1 million, 3 million, 10 million, 30 million, 100 million, 300 million, a billion, etc. And that you really find that a lot of times your key people in a growth environment like that cannot sustain and perform and suffer from huge imposter syndrome and ultimately incompetence, not in a bad way, just that like they just don't know how to do this next thing because they haven't been there, they haven't seen it, they haven't lived it. And if you're going to get, if you've got somebody that you hired at 100, they can probably get you to 300 and they can probably get to 1 million, but they might have a hard time getting you to 3 million because your business is completely different at 3 million than it was at 100. And so he said his theory was you can go through a couple of these ones and threes, and then you're going to exhaust the skill set of the people in those positions. And so this is something we find ourselves in pretty frequently as we deal with, we like to acquire businesses that are 1 million to 10 million in EBITDA, sometimes more, but that's a pretty average range. And that means that there's a lot of change going on that people in the company are going to have to deal with. And if, as the company grows, a lot of times they get kind of out over their skis a little bit. So the first thing, I guess, to explore is how do you go about identifying when it's time? So Ryan, I'd like to get your opinion on that. And then let's talk about how do you find the right people for the job and how do you deal with that transition?
Yeah. So as long as the company is continuing to scale seemingly without, any natural impediment, then that probably means you have the right team.
Yeah.
Right. And so it becomes obvious that maybe you don't when things start to slow down and when things start to flatline. Because even if you're going to say, well, it's an external force, there's the economy or there's season or there's this, right? That's all fine. But if you can look around at any other company in your space that is growing in spite of that, then that usually means that it's because they have people that know how to do that. And so that's always the first thing that we've got to look at is, we've got to acknowledge at some point that we're not growing as fast as we could or we should. So what does that mean? It's got to be a people issue just every single time. I mean, every single problem, every single challenge in business is going to be ultimately a failure in leadership. Even if, you could say, well, it's because I made that bad hire. It's right because you decided to make that bad hire, or you didn't, this thing happened that we couldn't have expected. It's like, yeah, but maybe a different leader would have seen it coming, or even if they didn't, would have responded faster. So that's a blanket statement that I still think is a good place to start from. So let's operate from this idea that, okay, we perhaps have a leadership issue somewhere within the company. For you, as the CEO, as the founder, if you are the leader, then you could say, well, it's all my fault, and therefore I'm going to, to quit and fire myself. And I've done that before. That's not where I would start. You can always go there. But if you think about it from a team perspective, right, you're not going to immediately be like, oh, well, the team's failing, so I guess I'll sell the team. No, you're going to say, well, hey, head coach, what's going on? And the head coach is going to look down at their next assistant coaches, be like, we need some help there. They're going to look at their players, and so you're generally going to look and see, which of these as we look, at the company, where are we missing? Now, when you start asking those questions, that's where all those emotional swirling that we went through before are going to pop up. And if you ever try to find an emotional solution to what is ultimately a business problem, you're not going to win.